And I'm Austin Visions Neil.
I love that.
Oh snap. Oh snap.
You sounded really silly in that intro, though. I'll tell you that much for all the
I think
Spotify
so.
listeners. They'd be like,
Damn.
huh? And I'm Austin Visions Deal. What happened to the other guy? Hey, it's Majors time, is what I was trying to say. That's what happens when you try to mess around with your audio settings too much. We got some interesting, spicy topics today. We were sitting behind the scenes, Austin. We were like, do we run a Defuse show today? Like, we only got 2 matches to go over. Like, there might not be enough to talk about. Oh, but wait, like the beginning of the week was kind of wild. So,
Oh yeah.
we got a
It
lot
was
to
an
get
interesting
through.
week.
Yeah,
There's
we
a lot.
absolutely.
There's the challenger changes. We got the team owners going at it. I mean, there's all kinds of things we can get into. So yeah,
All right,
let's get right into it,
all
Alan.
right, let's jump in. It's going to be First Blood coming up.
First Blood.
Yeah, a lot to talk about overall. But of course, here with First Blood, we take some of the biggest news and the hottest topics in COD and give it to you in relatively close to about 5-minute segments is what we're trying to do. And I think the biggest bit of news, I think at least I woke up to it. I'm pretty sure you were just behind me. How about the exchange happening on with Alex apparently going home due to a family emergency, and it's Zed who gets the surprise sub in for London today. What were your initial reactions when you saw that news?
I mean, the timing couldn't have been worse, right? Like I thought right away, like,
Yeah.
all right, they just got through an entire super week where sure London isn't looking great, but they got a lot of reps in, right? Like they got a lot of time in, and then they had a bit of time to also look over all those games. So I was thinking London might be able to come out and surprise, Ultra, I thought in towards the series, and for the most part they did with the sub in. But I mean, that's shocker for sure. And I mean, it's not easy to now have Parasite who got called up to replace Zero because he can't get over towards North America, and now you have Zed who's doing the exact same thing except a bit of a different situation for Alex. So this is just not what you want to be for Shawnee and Dylan, right? Like this is really scary. I think that it's really difficult to build any synergy when you don't have 4 players that you're constantly playing with at the moment.
That's a very fair point. Although, to be fair, Aid, this was brought up on broadcast. You got to remember that the reciprocity team from Black Ops 4, that was essentially this team. Obviously they're missing 2 players, but regardless, there's a lot of experience with them. And, I have been one of those guys that in the last couple of weeks have been talking largely about how London, if the results continue to go poorly, you've got to scrap the idea of just building a full-on UK roster. I'm hoping that everything's okay with Alex overall. That's the first and foremost. I'm hoping everything is okay. I mean, if you're taking an emergency flight back to United Kingdom for family reasons on a major playoff weekend, yeah, there's got to be something going on that's hopefully not super, super serious, and hope everything's cool. But for Zed overall, it's just like, man, I want to be a fan of the move. I just have a hard time being able to do that because even for his namesake team in the Elite Challenger series that we had, he was not even playing all that well then. So I don't know, man. I just don't know if this team is ever going to get out of this rut because now you're in a position to where you've gone through an entire first stage and you just don't have any certainties about your roster at all. You've got Parasite filling in because Zero can't get there, and now you've got Zed who fills in for what appears to be just the day for Alex. So what is this roster going to be, I think, is my biggest question.
It's just like it's so difficult. Like I'm just trying to put myself in the player's shoes for a second and think of really being in Shawnee and Dylan's shoes and just like, dude, like what is going on here? Like you're practicing strategies and then you're reteaching them to people like Parasite, or you're reteaching them then too. Zed, like it just, even if there's synergy from previous games, like you still have to get on the same page for how you want to play the game.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it is so difficult to do that. And it's like almost probably like, repeating yourself over and over and over again. It's getting so repetitive. It's like, oh my God, like we have to go through this again. We've already, went through these basic steps at the beginning of the game. So I want to see this squad succeed because, I have a lot of love for people like Shawnee and Dylan, who I think, have certainly been able to get themselves towards some high points and also some low points this season, just due to probably not having a solid roster. So I'm just all over the place with this, Alan. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what we're going to get. I want to just see solid 4 kind of just grind things out for an entire stage and hopefully see some improvement, right?
So with that in mind, I mean, Shane went out and said that they only had like 15 minutes worth of actual practice. This was a pretty last minute insertion into the mix. What does that say about Toronto, who let them get to game 5, man? Good. I mean, do you consider this to be success for London, or is this just Toronto imploding?
I think it's Ultra playing really bad at the moment. Sure, we see improvement in control, but I mean, it's just still so shaky, dude. Like, as an Ultra fan, as biased as I can be, I mean, right now they're not looking great, and it still feels so interesting because like there's a lot of great moments, like Kleenex today. Like Kleenex played great. He wasn't playing great, throughout the entire Super Week. Methods having some of these good starts and a lot of these clutch ups in towards these search and destroy rounds. It's just like you're seeing high moments from everyone. It's just like consistency. Like that's I think the biggest problem for Ultra. But I mean, yeah, I think this is more of like this is Ultra not performing well more than I think London really kind of just having a decent performance as a whole.
Yeah, for me, there were a couple of individual pop-off moments. That first search and destroy, Dylan comes out with streaks in the first 3 rounds. When you fall 3-0 when you're going up against streaks, it's very difficult to think that the win condition would be all that achievable. It's a lot of ground you have to make up. And even though, again, the streaks don't really pay off too much as far as kill potential, that information was very valuable. We saw that late into that map overall on Garrison. But then as well, I mean, you have to consider the fact that Bance was getting kind of styled on in Search and Destroy. Oof, there were inconsistencies all across the roster when it came to respawn outside of the raid control, where we didn't expect, I think, London to come out really doing too much work. I mean, let's be honest, 15 minutes of practice, so you're going to be able to actually figure out control. Probably not. And I want to say that Team Zed's control when they were playing in the Challengers Elite was also not terribly great. So not a lot going right for you. But I don't know, man. I just am left with this resounding feeling of just, like for that entire series, because for both sides, there wasn't a lot of positives to take away because of the situations at hand for London and because of the performance from Toronto.
I mean, you heard it. Like I was stressed. We got to that game 5 and I was sweating bullets down. I was sweating like it was not good. It was scary. And I mean, I don't think you make a roster change by any means, but something feels like it's really got to be shaken up behind the scenes before we get a little bit more confidence behind the
I just wonder what is the
I don't know. I can't put my finger on it.
Because
I cannot put my finger on it.
I look at that roster of 4 and I can say very positive things about all 4 of them, but the results are starting to really speak for themselves now, more than kind of throwing out the life vests overall when it comes down to what is going right versus what is going wrong. Hey, how about a little bit of drama? We don't usually do this all that often, but it's kind of hard to ignore it. Wester in a bit of a weird situation after Zaptius was dropped, released, whatever vernacular you want to use. They bring in Phantoms to fill his position. We'll talk more on that later. But then beyond that, Zap goes a little bit rogue, hijacks the Twitter and says, Wester's my name, not yours. So what? Deal with it.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny because I don't really know what's like going on with this Wester brand. I think people like as a whole are kind of confused. Like, is this like an organization? Is this like a team? Like, it's kind of hard to pinpoint exactly what it is specifically. But I mean, Zaptius, I guess one of the original founders, has the Twitter and is like, listen, if you guys are going to drop me, well, you guys aren't going to remain on the team. So I thought that was pretty funny to come out with, and Zap probably firing back a little bit because based off his tweets, he probably felt like he wasn't the person to be dropped in the situation. I feel like Zap has been one of those standout players so far in towards the beginning of the year. But I think the simple fact is when you've had, so many top 16 placements in a row here throughout these Challenger Cups, and you didn't finish first. Sure, you got second, which was, a good performance from NYSL Academy in that grand final. I think really surprising them and being able to take a lot of those maps. Maybe you just feel like you need to make a bit of a change for a refresher, something different in towards the comms going in towards stage 2, because that's what it feels like. I don't think it's maybe, a fact that it's Zaptius playing bad. It's they're looking for a change, seeing if someone might be able to also fill that role and maybe even bring more to the table.
But like, you're bringing in Phantoms,
an AR,
a slow AR, and you're have to fill a gap with probably Paul to fill Zaptius's role of kind of, again, that aggressive SMG that plays alongside of Venom. My whole thing is, outside of the team composition, look, is this a team name? Is this a collection of players and only 4 of them get to brand themselves as Wester? Because apparently, Jintroid is also a Wester member. So is Glow Frosty. It's confusing. That's my biggest takeaway. And now that the Twitter has been hijacked by Zaptius because he seems to think that the idea is his, and now all these players are like, but we just signed up as Wester for the cup. Well, what does that leave for us? What, just figure out what you are. That's what I'm going to sit there and say first and foremost. Are you an actual
Agreed.
team, or is it just a collection of players and you're allowing 4 of them to use the name? Because if it's a collection of players, I can't imagine anyone would be sitting there saying, yes, this is the Western team, because you're identifying yourself as a collection of players. My whole thing on this is I don't care. It's a name. It's a brand. It's in the challenger scene. Yes, has Western been an identifier for the last year and a half? Sure. But largely it's just like, dude, I see this hit in my TL and I'm like, get it off. I don't care. It's just a name. And it seems like it's not that big of a deal because, well, it's a collection of players. Oh, but it's also our team name. Pick one. Let's just pick one.
I'm with you, Alan. Let's just figure that out first, and then we'll kind of
you.
just go along with everything else after, figure out roles, figure out who's doing what. But I mean, that does shake up things like who is going to be, playing the second sub now, right? Because Gravity and Phantoms, like both to me, like right away, like those are like the same players. Like that's the exact same role, right?
Absolutely.
Like and I mean, this game, has not been built off of how slow you're playing. It's usually, how fast your subs are playing and how fast one of your flex ARs are able to get behind you with that. So, I mean, I think that's really been the success so far of Cold War, and the fact that we're adding this in is telling us maybe, that we just do not know everything yet, and that they have something up their sleeve because they surely must have practiced with Phantoms before bringing him on. So, I mean, it is really leaving me with some question marks at the moment.
I think it's leaving everybody with a lot of question marks because you're coming off of one of the hottest preseasons in challengers without question. You finished second in the first stage of the elite. Outside of a couple of things going wrong, everything seemed to be fixable. But then you find yourself in a position to where we're going to make this giant change right before a cup. Yeah, guaranteed a spot into the second stage, so you don't have to worry about qualifying. But it just feels weird because you also got to keep in mind that players like Paul turned down CDL offers because they wanted to keep the core 4 together. So does that mindset now all of a sudden go out the table? Because we know that there are going to be teams looking for players. If you're Venom now, do you sit there and say, well, I'm going to go take a CDL offer if I get one, because what's the point of us trying to do this? I mean, I'm not going to sit there and assume negative connotation necessarily, but if you're Venom and your whole idea, or Paul before, or even Gravity now, and you're being individually approached for a CDL offer, and you were sitting there saying, no, this core 4 wants to stick together so we could get all collectively picked up, that's out the window now. So do you take that chance if it's given to you? I think you kind of have to.
I think you do. I mean, like, go back to the interviews. The interviews that we had with these guys are like, man, we're sticking together through the whole thing. Like, the whole thing. And now you look back on it, right? And like that exact moment, it's like, should Paul have tried out for what, seemed to be the London roster? Who knows? Like, who knows what's going to happen? It's very strange.
Very, very strange. But hey, we had getting out of the drama talk and getting back into the COD talk. How about this battle for the oceans?
Oh boy.
Neptune and the Florida Mutineers, 1v4 situation. Skies investing in his game. Awakening being maybe MVP caliber. Slacked around for the ride. And then you've got Seattle, who did their darndest to be sure. I mean, hey, a couple of close comeback efforts in there.
Yes.
But it independently was not going to be enough to get them back into this matchup.
Respawn's still a problem. I mean, that first map, I mean, on Crossroads, right? Like, they really almost did bring things back, but it's the problem that they're putting themselves in these deficits that they then have to come back into. It's never them in control and maybe fumbling a lead and saying, this is where it went wrong for us and we could have closed this one out. It's like we always have to get ourselves back into the game and we're never actually starting off hot. And that is obviously, a massive problem for a team that is now following the same steps as they did last year, right? Like, if you're a Seattle Surge fan, like, do you even like want to wear the merch? Like, do you want to go outside? Like, like covering your eyes as you walk out the door? Like, I don't know, man.
You're rocking your Octane jersey, and that's about it, I think, right now.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. I feel really bad for them at the moment. And it's like, what are they going to do? I think that there's a significant problem. I tweeted this earlier. I think that the SMGs here for Pristini and Looney are just very much behind every single other team's SMGs in the game right now. There's a massive tempo issue. I mean, you have Pristini, who almost wants to run like a 30 AR on the map right now, which is not the way to go in towards Cold War unless you're playing like Checkmate or something like this. So I think that it is very, very concerning for Surge because they need to get themselves some W's, and this is another tournament where they are out in the first round in the losers bracket.
Look, it's just one of those things that we're not just seeing, a couple of lost gunfights. we're seeing just a complete breakdown of mental integrity, I feel like, from the Seattle Surge. That 1v4 ace, again, that's probably the 10th time that we could sit there and say should never have happened. I mean, Neptune is playing against a timer and has to find 3 kills. Like, you have to be able to kill off 45 seconds between 3 players. Like, it just has to happen. So with that, it's just one of those things that's so difficult because I still believe that Octane and Gunless can make that team work as an AR duo. But the problem is what's happening up front, because even when you've got Pristini coming out hot on that Garrison control, they still get smacked around in a 3-0 form. So there is something more integral that is happening that is absolutely problematic. Joy Nubsy was saying that the team is improving and improving quickly, but that could be easy to stay when you start from 0. I mean, let's be honest. The entire first week was not exactly what we would call to be great. And now you're dealing with a team of CL Surge that have lost a vast majority of every single mode they've played. They're losing on an average of 40 points on hardpoint. They're losing on an average of 2 rounds on control, which is not good. And the only saving grace has been, oddly enough, the search and destroy. So, I don't know. Something's got to change for this team and change very quickly. But staying away from the negatives and focusing on the positives, how about Florida's performance? I mean, is this what we should have expected from day one? Because in my mind, we heard the broadcast talking about how a lot of people had this team maybe even possibly top 4 at the beginning of the year.
We really did. And I feel like we've gotten like small glimpses of again, like all these individual plays, very similar to Ultra, I feel like, in that same aspect, where
That's
it's
fair.
like, we know they can do it, right? Like they have the ability to be able to have these crazy moments. And well, let's be fair, there was a lot of them today. I think, Wake, taking over the control was fantastic. Neptune's technical 1v4, I think is what I'm going to call it. And then you had Caesar Skies where he's like, listen, we're not going to a search and destroy here for the second time. Like, we're ending it now. And went on like a 12-3 before it was finally Slack that actually ended up ending his life and his kill streak. So there is a lot of great takeaways here for Florida. And I mean, they got a lot of reps in last week through the Super Week, got to play up against a lot of squads, and they win their very first matchup. I think both of these loser round ones is like a really good confidence builder, saying, all right, we smack these guys around. We know that we can do it. We have the talent. We can look back on this VOD and also clean things up going in towards the next one. So I think if anything, Florida is certainly going to come away with a lot of great takeaways and look to really bring that in towards the next matchup and maybe even potentially, make a deeper run than a lot of people are anticipating.
I'm still waiting to see what Slacked is going to bring to the table, because we've seen a lot of great individual performances from the other 3. Slacked has had a couple of okay lives that we could string together where he's gotten 4. Nice. Way to go, Slack. Good job. But, is he going to be a catalyst for success for this team? Because when we get away from 5v5 and go to 4v4, you have to have everybody performing to be at the top. I mean, that's got to be the goal. It's not just have a serviceable year. If you're a Florida Mutineer fan, it's you want to win. And if you're going to win versus teams like Atlanta and Dallas and LA and Chicago, you're going to have to come out with all 4 players swinging. You can't just rely on the fact that, Skies, it'll be fine. Skies will go find a 12-0 start. Or, Awakening will just continue to get all the first bloods and search and destroy. Someone else has to be able to step up to the plate. And it kind of feels very similar to Seattle, where you trust that AR duo, and we're still waiting to see that SMG duo have a moment where it's both of the SMG players are taking over a map, because we haven't seen that yet from Slack. Yeah, there's been a couple of great moments from Neptune, maybe a map or two where we could talk about how he's taken over, but it's not to the same level that you would talk about a Scump or an Envoy or a Simp or an Abizi or, any other SMG you want to name outside of the top 4 teams right now.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. Absolutely. And well, that's a good transition in towards our next segment here, baby. We got Chalk or Talk, Alan.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Austin. I think my favorite part about Chalk or Talk is actually the background music, which I just realized was muted, so the stream didn't actually hear it, but we got a chance to hear it. Love that little jingle in the background. But hey, Chalk or Talk here. Hot statement is what will be posed, and then we have to make the determination of, do we chalk it up or do we talk it up? And this first one, I think, is quite spicy indeed. We have got ourselves that conversation about Toronto. Again, we're sitting here talking about all these other teams that are looking to make changes, but what about Toronto? How about this one? Insight should be subbed in for Toronto. You chalking it or you talking it?
I'm going to chalk this one, Alan. I mean, Insight, who is he going to come in for? It would have to probably be Cammy or Methods. And those are the two I think that have certainly been able to hold their own. Cammy maybe hasn't been popping off as much as he did last year, but I still think that this team with a little bit more time is going to be able to mesh. I think the one thing we learned from last year is once we actually finally got like a core 5 players in towards the end of the year and let that ride out for the rest of the season, we saw how they improved and made a lot of big upsets and obviously won their own homestand as well. So there was a lot of big factors, I think, when they actually were able to get towards that point. Sure, there's a lot of concern, and I've stressed as ever as an Ultra fan at the moment, but I still do believe in this squad, and I don't think you bring Insight in just yet.
For me, I will also be chalking this, and I think I largely agree with what you had to say, that I just don't know who Insight would replace, if he does get brought in. What happens? I mean, it's the same situation, about Wester. You've got another AR on the bench right now. Who do you take out? I mean, I can't see a world that he's able to replace Methods or Cammy for that matter, or Bans, because let's be honest, those are your flex roles that you have. And then, I mean, Kleenex is safe. I mean, he's Kleenex. He's still doing nasty things. In my mind, though, about this team and where I kind of take the chalk is not necessarily because of the roles, but because I feel like this Toronto Ultra team is the best bad team in the CDL right now. I mean, they are hanging on by a thread in a lot of these series, and there have been other moments where they're only a couple of points away from getting us to that next map versus Atlanta or versus Chicago, to where if their search and destroy is still very solid, maybe they do have the opportunity to take those squads down. The thing about it is you got to beat the teams that are below you. That's just the simple fact of the matter. If you're going to struggle versus the top 3 teams, that's fine, but you have to start beating the teams that I think a lot of people categorize as being below them, because again, you just look at this whole roster and you say, where's the weak point? I can't find one. Everyone is playing at about the same level right now. So I think for me, that's the bigger reason why I'm chalking it, more than just the compositional of, who do you sub out for Insight? I think it's the fact that this 4 is so close to being able to beat those teams. It's just scary when you go game 5 versus a team that has 15 minutes of practice and I'm sure is panicking a little bit. Yeah, it can't happen. Can't happen.
No, it can't happen. And well, next we got Zed to start here for the London Royal Ravens. And I thought about this one when we were writing it up, and I think I'm going to talk this one. I mean, what's the worst that can go wrong, right? Like, you haven't won a series so far in towards the year. Parasites come in. You don't have 0. Like, it can't get any worse. You can only literally go up if you're finally able to get yourself a series win. And I feel like just getting 4 players, like, get some kind of a stable environment for these guys to practice in and just allow them to be able to, all right, let's get on the same page. This is how we want to play every single game mode, get the practice in, get the reps in, and then see how they do going in towards the next stage. Because right now, bringing in players constantly is just not the way you're going to be able to grow whatsoever. It doesn't matter if they're the best of the best and you're grabbing the best AMs in the scene. Like, you need to be able to have some kind of stabilization, I feel like, for the squad in order for them to really excel.
I think you already know what I'm going to say here. I am hardcore chalking this point. 0.88. That's the kill death ratio that Zed pulled through the Challengers Elite Series. How do you expect that to be any better against the CDL pros? I cannot see a world where this would turn out anywhere near favorably for the side of the London Royal Ravens. Again, I'm not even just chalking Zed as a starter. I'm chalking the whole idea of using UK players only. And we got to get past it. I'm chalking that completely. Get that out of the institution of this London team. Get a team that could get some wins, because this season's not going to get any easier. I mean, the pieces that are already there are not good enough. That again, the same reasons that we talk about for Florida. Will they be able to fully compete versus the top 4 teams that are out there? I can't see a world that this London team is going to be able to do that. I mean, with the players that are currently available, I don't see it happening. It would have to be a miracle, I feel like, for that to occur. Someone would have to just all of a sudden wake up one day and be like, wait a second, light bulb, epiphany, this is how Cold War is played, and just completely innovates how the game is played. Because right now, there is not a single member on this squad that is in a top-tier competitive form. And that means that the whole team is not going to be there. You got to build up some other way, in my mind, or find a way to start negotiating with some top tier players that are in the challenger scene and see if you can get a good collection of 4 players there that are, playing for Origlis or something like that, because this team is just not it. It's a tough day, but I just don't think that there's a good answer that is a UK player currently living in the United States that I got.
Fair enough, Alan. Fair enough. Poor Zed. Hopefully he's not watching.
I mean, it's nothing personal. It never
I
is.
know,
But
I
let's
know.
be
I'm
honest.
playing.
It's just that's not good enough. Like 0.88 as a KD
Sure.
was literally one of the worst at Challengers Elite. He was a minus 82 when it came to kills versus deaths. The only players that were below him were Nagafen and Jimbo. So he was the third worst when it came to kill to death ratio, essentially overall. That's not great news. But speaking of other news, and this is a step away from stuff, how about all the COD beef? Hastro
Wow.
starting beef with the Los Angeles Thieves. I don't want to go into that beef specifically, but how about this statement? Team owners stirring up the timeline is good for Call of Duty. Chalking or talking team owners getting involved with the beef?
I want to talk it because there's some people like Hex, there's some people like Nadeshot, people like Hastro. They've been in the scene for a very, very long time, and they have a decent enough following where they're able to make these points, and it can kind of be expanded on for as far as rivalries that are trying to be built up. And we are trying to create these narratives. We're still only year 2 in towards the CDL after franchising, right? So it's still very early on, and I like the idea of it. I just think the approach specifically that we just had recently from Hastro just wasn't exactly it. But I do like the idea of it in general because I do feel like it makes it fun. I mean, you get the engagements, the fans get to chime in, you get to have, these little battles. I just think sometimes it gets taken a step too far, specifically in the Call of Duty scene, and they're kind of unable to really let that go. But personally, I think that it's fun to have.
I am going to chalk this with a caveat. I don't want to fully chalk it. I'm just kind of chalking this. And the reason being is essentially this. You don't see in any other esport, and not just esport, that's not exactly a great example, any other traditional sport where the team owners are the ones that are getting involved. You don't see the owner of the White Sox trash talking the owner of the Cubs when Chicago plays their inter-baseball city rivalry. Now, the thing about it is, Hastro currently holds more influence than the vast majority of the players that play in the CDL. So, with that in mind, if you want to stir up the timeline, which I think stirring up the timeline is good, he might just be the only guy that could really go away to do it. And to see people like Courage getting involved, that's just also just an extra bonus, I think, beyond that, because there is never a moment that Courage is ever not going to be funny. That's just the case. When he did a little side-by-side screenshot of total esports earnings between Hastro and himself, I absolutely lost my mind. That was so funny. And just to be honest, it was a totally different day and age, but it was still really, really funny overall. So I'm going to chalk it. I would like to see the players get more involved, I think, is what I'm trying to say overall for it. But I get that Hastro's influence is pretty overreaching, so why not? Hey, that brings us to our next segment. It's time for Overextended. We've got a really good mix today, too. We've got a really good mix of things to talk about. If you have not seen the show before and you're wondering what Overextended is, we're going to take a point, a very mild one, a recent result, if you will, and we're going to take it and just way overreact to it and go as far as humanly possible with one small little instance. So with that in mind, you've got a one today that I'm going to wish you the best of luck on this one. I'm just going to say that much here because this is okay. I'll just let you take this. Just go for it.
No luck needed, Alan. Paris Legion, you see it on their screen. They're going all the way. They're going to be able to pull off a lot of upsets. I think these guys are going to be able to, at the very least, be able to push in towards the top 4. I say this because this is one of these underdog squads that no one had any expectations for. There is no pressure on these guys' shoulders because we know the Paris Legion brand, well, they haven't done an excellent job at being a brand itself. So we get ourselves in towards 4 players who were all misfits, did not get picked up, essentially just got slotted in, and they end up finding some great success against Atlanta FaZe. Sure, they don't close out that series, but they had some excellent clutch plays. I feel like this is a squad that is really overlooked at the moment, and maybe after that series, people are going to pay them a lot more attention and actually prep for them properly, looking over their VOD, seeing what they're doing. But it just feels like this squad is just probably one of the best teams in the game right now at simply using teamwork. They don't have a superstar player. If you do have one, maybe it's Classic who's been able to pop off here and there. But I just think that the squad has the potential to be able to run through Florida, run through the next round, depending on who they end up playing up against, and they will have enough in them to be able to beat that one as well. So I just have a lot of faith in these guys. I think they're playing extremely well, and they are one of the best squads with their teamwork in the game currently.
Look, I think you've got a lot of ground to work with here. I was kind of finessing with some numbers before we went live with the CDL games today. The Paris Legion are technically, based on like overall how the modes have gone, are actually like the number 7th rated team on power, but the team that is above them is the Minnesota Rocker, who's very beatable right now because they're the worst hardpoint team in the game. The one weakness for Paris has been their search and destroy. So who are you looking at, I think, for Paris? Because that's where it has to come from. It has to be the search and destroy amount. If Paris make top 4, it has to be through the search. Are you just looking at Aqua and the Classic specifically to continue to run Menace, or do you need more participation from Fire and Scraps?
I feel like Scraps actually played. He was like the one player that's like not been talked about so far, because you have a rookie, you have Classic, who's kind of been the big veteran from the past, and Aqua's been holding his own. I think Scraps is the player that I think is personally going to be able to step up for us. He had a great showing against Atlanta FaZe. Like, there was a couple moments where it felt like Scraps was doing some Scraps things from the past, which is something that people just simply forgotten about, right? So, I mean, I think that's where a lot of the success is going to come from going in towards their future matches here.
It's been interesting, I think, just because I've kind of used it as my own personal meme about the Paris Legion raid control strategist, rush an objective and get as many ticks as possible, forehead. But hey, if it works, it works, and sometimes it definitely does. That brings me to my bit of overextension, and this is going to be a hot topic here. I am not a fan of what's going on with the Wester team. This is Paul and Co., not whatever Zaptius tries to make. I think that this Wester team fails to contend in this first overall cup. That is included with the fact that it is a top 16 double elimination bracket, not just a top 8. I think they're going to be hard pressed even to lock in a top 8 right now. You look back at what they've done in the last 3 cups that they've played in, it's only been top 16 finishes. And they got beat up by a New York Subliners Academy team in that Elite Challengers final. I just don't think, with Phantoms coming into the mix, that they are going to be able to get Paul in line with what Venom wants to do. I think there's going to be a lot of problems also trying to figure out what exactly are we going to do with 2 of the slowest ARs in Challengers. Got to give credit to Methods. He posted a really funny meme of, let's take a look. It's a 2v4 for Phantoms and Gravity. It was like 2 slugs racing up against each other. They're literally so slow playing. I just don't know how you make that work, because in the past for Wester, a lot of their success has been off the fact that your SMGs are going to get really aggressive together, you ARs are going to watch lanes, and then they'll be active. I don't know if Paul's going to be exactly able to just turn right up during a major cup and just instantly play at the same speed as Venom. Will those opening round matchups that you expect him to cruise through be enough time? I don't think so. I've got Wester finishing top 16 again in this one.
Listen, I like the argument. I think that Zaptius being removed from this roster wasn't the right move. Phantoms, I don't see how things are going to drastically improve, but everything just falls on Venom, right? Like, how much can Venom do, like, in these respawns? Because he has been one of the most outstanding SMGs up there, I feel like, with Saints, and someone who, again, isn't really talked about enough, even after his performance last year and this year. And I am a little bit worried to see exactly what they're going to be able to do with the submachine guns. Is Paul going to be able to really fill the shoes of Zaptius, who was one of the main shot callers in the search and destroy? I mean, there's a lot of question marks for us again here for this squad, and I think that there's certainly an argument to see them continuously place at what they've been doing here with their top 16s over the last couple of cups. So it's definitely possible.
I'm in this boat where Paul would have to blow the roof off the scene for a second time in 3 months. Like, he came out with an AR and just started pooping on people. Crim6 accused him of hacking, amongst another of other pros. He would have to do the same thing again, I think, with an SMG for Wester to be back into top contention. Hey, that brings us to our final segment of the evening as we take a look forward to scrap time. We'll be taking 6 topics and in 20 seconds each, kind of giving you the reactions overall. This is, I'm going to want to spend more than 20 seconds on some of these, so we'll have to really do our best to try to hold ourselves honest with what we're about to have here. But you ready? Ready to get this started? You warmed up? You loose?
I'm warmed up. I'm loose.
Got the bones cracked?
Ready to go.
All right.
Always down.
All right. Let's get in. Topic number 1. What about Thorin completely losing it on the timeline against all the COD drama?
Thorin, just stick to CSGO. Stick to League of Legends, brother. All right. This is just not in your league, and I think he's completely lost at the moment, Alan.
Dude, he tried to like make a fan fiction talking about JCap having no friends. Like, dude, get a life. Like, I hear the Counter-Strike community barely even likes you in the first place. Stay out of our zone. Go back to your community. Speaking of trying to spread some stuff, how about Wuskin on London saying that, hey, you should have picked me up at the beginning of the year because this is an absolute embarrassment, essentially.
Listen, Wuskins, they probably would have picked you up if you would have played some challengers. I mean, you just don't have the reps. You haven't played. He hasn't played.
Has
He's
not played.
Warzone, Allen.
He's playing Warzone, grinding the stream. I 100% agree with you. If you want something bad enough, you got to go and get it. Prediction time. Battle for the North. Minnesota versus Toronto. Who you got?
This time, Ultra, they're going to show up. They're prepared. I feel like even after the shaky start today, they're going to come through. They're going to win this series 3-2.
I'm going to go with... I want a certain team to win, but I'm not going to predict for them because my predictions always make them play poorly. I'm going to say Minnesota wins, but in reality, they actually don't. Now, going over back to Florida again, they do play up against your perennial top 4 making a run in Paris. Who you got in this one?
I got Paris. You know I do. I took them on the OE. I have faith in them. I think they're going to get this one locked down 3-1. I don't think Florida is going to be able to deal with their teamwork.
I think that Florida's going to come out. They're going to play a very nice, complete game, and they're going to take it in 4. I just don't think Paris is going to get through that first search, and I've got 2 of the respawns going the way of the Florida Mutineers. Battle for Los Angeles. How about this one? What do you got, Thieves or Gorillas?
Thieves all the way. LAG looking a little bit better. Thieves, even after the 0-3 loss, they played a couple of tight maps, and I still have a lot of faith in this team to be able to do some damage in this bracket.
I've got LAT, not LAG. I've got the Thieves taking this one in 5. I like what I've seen so far from the Gorillas, but this would be a little bit more difficult for them, and I think I miscued somewhere. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. There's the last 20 seconds. New York versus Chicago. Who you got in the final? Do you think New York could actually get this upset?
Oh, I think New York has it in them to potentially do it, but I still think that Optic is just too consistent in their respawns right now. Best respawn game. I think they're going to close this one out 3-1 and drop the search.
I think this is going to be a 3-1 as well. Optic dropping the search. I think New York is going to play a very solid game, but I don't think they're going to have enough to get the upset here, unfortunately. Hey, it's scrap time. Brings us into viewer questions, where we take all of your guys' questions. Mostly we would be going into a giveaway, but I'm not going to. I forgot again to put the giveaway up. I've missed 2 of them, but I'll make sure we get one up after this show. We do need to set up what skins do we have left to give away, because we're starting to run out. If we're being honest with you.
Think we got 5 left at the moment. I want to say we have.
Oh, we've got
Thieves?
no, we gave away the Thieves one. That one we gave away last time. So we've got a Florida Mutineers, London Royal Ravens, Minnesota Rocker, Paris, and then Seattle Surge. Why don't we go ahead and do Paris, since you're so hot in these guys right now? We'll do Paris.
I like
next.
that. Let's do Paris.
All right. So next time up on Friday, we'll be giving away a Paris CDL team pack. So make sure you're around for that. And we're, again, fielding questions from the audience at large right now. If you listen on Spotify, again, that means that we do this show live on Twitch. If you're watching live on Twitch, hey, we do this show at your leisure to listen to on all of your favorite podcast providers. So there you go. Get on into it. Does Optic win this first major and then disappear like they have in past years from Fatty Patty?
So I'm really sad that Fatty Patty asked this question, because my big plan was I predicted Optic was going to win the whole thing, and I was going to come out with, they win the first event every time. How do you guys not know this? But I guess this time it's a bit different. We are, of course, online compared to LAN, and I think that's where the Optic roster thrives the most. But I still do think that these guys are actually going to be able to at least come through with this. I have them winning the entire thing. Will they disappear after? I don't know. It's 4v4. I think the squad is really, really good, and they only are going to get better, but I think these guys are at least going to take the first one.
I mean, I don't have them winning the first one, so I really can't say that at the moment. I've got Atlanta winning this one. I don't think this Optic roster falls off, though. You know,
No.
You go back to Black Ops 4, you go back to Modern Warfare. 5v5 is so volatile, especially considering the fact that there were kind of question marks around Chicago in those early instances. They win Vegas in Black Ops 4, but then Zuma has to play for the first couple of weeks of the first split, and then he's got to be changed out, and Optic kind of struggles for a bit, kind of getting caught up. And then last year, kind of the same situation with the roster moves that we had. So I don't necessarily think that they're going to have as much of a fall off that they had as the last 2 years specifically. I don't really want to go too much further back into history, because then we're just kind of making this full of speculation. I think this team is going to be a top 3 all year. I don't see them really having too many problems, unless for some reason they just have a complete breakdown on control, and then they don't get any better at search. That's the only way I see them losing. I don't see them losing 2 hard points that are largely about anybody this year. And if they do, it's not going to be all that often. So that's what I got there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's going to be a good battle for sure. And I think that the only other team that's probably going to be highly contested for that first place spot is probably going to be FaZe. But I think there's still a lot of teams that can, can come in and just on any day. Like we have to remember, like we're in tournament format. So like some teams just show up and they just play better on the day. Like that was, a massive talking point from the past. So I mean, who knows? Like there could be some massive upsets. And I think if Optic does lose early, I
Yeah.
think there's a chance that they will absolutely be knocked out, I think, before even making it like top four or something.
That's possible. Okay, this is going from Aaron. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but it's good kind of refocusing it. Would dropping the sub duo be enough for Seattle to get better, or is there a deeper issue with the team?
Yeah, I think the best performing players without a doubt have been the ARs, right? Like Gunless, ever since switching towards 240 hertz, like Chance said on broadcast today, right? Like he's been looking a lot better. We have, Octane, who I don't think has been doing the same things that he was last year per se in Modern Warfare, but he's still holding his own. He's still showing that he deserves to be, the main AR on that roster. I think the problem comes within the tempo, and it's the SMGs not being able to keep up with Ultra's SMGs, with the Scumpin Envoys, the
Right.
Phases, the Tiny Terrors. Like there's too many good, strong SMG combinations in the league at the moment where like if you can't match the pressure and keep up with the speed that they're playing at, they're going to run over you and they're going to be able to out rotate you, break the hills. And you're not going to be able to get a chance to set up. So I think the solution is getting two SMGs in there to see if that will hopefully shake things up in their favor.
I just am in this world where whenever have we seen one side of a team be able to carry the other to victories? Like,
Mm,
how often have we seen just
true.
the ARs are the ones that are winning these matches, and consistently being able to do it. The opposite is also true. Whenever have we seen just an
Mhm.
SMG duo win a set? Let's just say in the scheme of like an event, an SMG duo or an AR duo just wins an event because they played that well. It doesn't happen. You have to have a good collection, especially in 4v4. And we're not seeing that right now. So I think overall, you absolutely need to be in a place where, yeah, this SMG duo has to be under fire right now. And
Mhm.
after the loss today, I would not be surprised if the eyes of a Joey Nubsy or the Seattle management are all focused on what's going to happen in this Challengers Cup. Where are the best SMGs right now? Do we actually look to make a move after the Challengers Cup is over? Because it's not exactly the most safe and secure way to look at a player, I think, because again, you could come out and have a good day, but that's kind of on me and you. We have to tell the story about these players and how they've done so far,
Yeah.
because I could absolutely see that being a consideration at this point, because something's got to change. And let's be honest, there's not really a trade potential, I think, for a Looney and a Pristini right now. Taking a look, 0.88 overall KD for Looney, 0.81 for Pristini. Those are
Yeah, man.
amongst the bottom 6 players in the league. Not good.
No, it's not great. And I like this question here from Chris. With the XM4 G8 looming in the horizon, do y'all see the 74U also going and maybe get an MP5
Yeah.
Krig meta? What are you thinking, Alan?
I'm thinking that we just need a nice little smooth over balance patch to come in.
That would be nice.
That has to happen first and foremost, because the GAs will happen, and
Mhm.
that in my mind is not good for this game competitively. I think the fact that we have a okay, solid, long range, stable option in the Krig. I like that the M4 is finding, obviously right now, a lot of function in the mid range, is kind of like that Maddox so and so. And then the 74U is also very strong. If we go to a Krig MP5 meta as the weapon stand right now, that is going to be some of the most boring COD I think we've seen in a long time, because the MP5 tickles at long range and the Krig dominates at long range. So I feel like the only fights we're going to get are Krig versus Krig and MP5 versus MP5, if those happen at all, because the game is going to slow down a lot to try to get the MP5s in a position to where they can actually even find value.
I mean, I don't know if I fully agree. I feel like you're right, but it almost doesn't make sense that a 74U should be able to
No, it
beam
doesn't.
someone,
And
right?
that's why I say I think there needs to be a balancing patch to come over to make the
Sure.
74U a little less powerful and the M4 a little less
Right.
powerful. And then maybe there's the opportunity for that 3-gun meta to actually be fully utilized.
But there was a moment last year where we had, I think it was the Merc foregrip that was GA'd. I want to say I could be wrong because there was 1,000 attachments in that game,
Dude, I don't
but
remember him.
it was yeah, there was an attachment that like allowed you to be able to have more damage or was more um veracity like at range. And once they GA'd that, it felt like the game was like, okay, now we're actually seeing like what SMGs are playing their role correctly because they have to finesse and actually have to play the game to a point where they're getting into these close range engagements and aren't just ego challenging because they know that their weapon can contest something like a
That's
Krig.
fair.
So like I think it would be like, let's just like try it, like let's just give it a week of
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
let's see how it
Yeah.
works
I
first,
I
but
would
I
be
think a weapon
fine.
tuning is needed.
I mean, we're going to see it this weekend, with the EU Challengers Cup. I
Yeah,
assume that
that
this
is
is going
true.
to be live for this weekend. So we'll get a pretty decent look as far as what the Krig versus 74U is going to look like. We probably won't see any MP5, obviously, but I have to imagine that in EU, when that comes up, we're going to be seeing 3 SMGs. We're going to see maybe 1 Krig for a lot of the maps and then 3 SMGs
Yeah,
for the rest.
I think it's very possible. I mean, at 74U, like it's just too good not to have 3 of them.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yeah, there's
it
already a
really
lot of
is.
people pulling out the Krig, and I really do like the Krig as well. I like the gun. The gun just when you use it, you know what I mean? Like it just feels good, and it almost feels like it's supposed to be, in the meta every single game. And the XM4 obviously is just too good out front. So I mean,
Yeah.
there does have to be a change, but it's a weapon tuning would be,
Needs
really
to it
just
needs to happen.
be perfect. It'd be
Yeah.
perfect.
And like I could give them a little, Treyarch a little bit of credit because they have come through and made changes to the maps, to league play,
Mhm.
stuff like that. So if that has been their focus in the last couple of months, that makes sense. Now it's time to go back and re-hit these weapons again. It's been time at this point. Vanquisher Games has asked, after today's match with the slow start for Toronto, what takeaways, suggestions should the team focus more on? Strength in the North, he says, hashtag.
Love
What?
that, by the way. Ultra fan, if you didn't know.
What?
Um,
No.
I think this is interesting because it's, like, really hard to pinpoint, right? Like, I think this is the problem with Ultra, like and I mean, like, I've been even breaking down some of their stuff because I do it, and I'm wondering, like, dude, like, what is it that's going wrong? Because it's like one map, it's fine, one map, it's not. I think actually the key takeaway as well from today is when Vance did his interview with Lottie, he had touched on a fact and said, "Listen, like, I'm usually one of the main voices for the squad, and I felt like I wasn't living up to my own performance, so I was focusing more individually on me than I was on the team." And he
Sure.
felt like that had a really negative impact, and clearly it did because after their very first win, they ended up losing 4 straight. So I think that is certainly a factor, and maybe with Bance getting kind of back on track, that could help them be a little bit more organized and be a little bit more in sync when they are creating these holes and these pushes. But I still feel like there's something almost a little bit deeper that I just really can't put my finger on that is currently going wrong here for them. So I don't have a definitive answer.
Now, I'm going to answer the question by asking another question here. Do you feel, because I think this is the same thing. I think it's a lot of, again, how many times have they choked up rounds, whether it's in search and destroy or they've choked the ends of hard points?
HPs, yeah,
Yet
a
it's a
lot.
lot of that decision making, I think, is where you turn your attention to. But if Band starts to focus more on IGLing and calling and not
Mhm.
necessarily specifically putting the blinders on his own gameplay, are we going to expect to see Bance not finding kills in search and destroy again? Is it kind of a
Sure.
battle of what edge of the sword would you rather have?
I mean, it's definitely a factor. I think that I mean, it felt like Bance was losing some gunfights. Maybe he shouldn't have today, but he was. I mean, I don't know if that's all, maybe just way down on IGLing, but I mean, it's got to play a factor. When you start focusing on the mini map and what your teammates are doing more than yourself, like you're naturally going to take a hit unless you have years and years of practice of it, like Crim
Right.
6 and the Clay Spirits, right? That have just they've understood how to create the balance in the game where someone for Bance who is still, kind of young for his professional career
Yeah.
might be still trying to figure that out. So I mean that's a great point on why he might be taking a hit, but it's something you might have to do for the better good of everyone performing at their best as a squad.
I agree. Okay, let's take this one last question for Fatty Patty. One player for each of y'all that you had high hopes for coming into the season, but has disappointed.
Looney.
You had high hopes for
Looney.
Looney. Okay.
I did. Um I was thinking especially like with last time we saw Looney in 4v4, right? Like it was World War II, and that's when we had that Rise Nation roster. That
Yep.
roster that Looney just specifically would like lay down prone, pull up the mini map in direct traffic, man. Like this was something he did. He did in that game. And that is not easy to do whatsoever. And it takes a lot of game knowledge and a lot of confidence to be able to do something like that because all the weight falls on you if things aren't going right from a macro point of view. But I think Looney for me, I think I had high hopes for 4v4 Looney. There was a lot of people that vouched for Looney at the beginning of the season.
Absolutely
And
did.
even though he's had some great moments, I think it hasn't been to the standard of the level that needs to be played at where we have all these other professional players in the league that are just performing so well and doing what he's doing better.
That's totally fair. I'm kind of deciding between two players that I'm going to pick I think the easier option, I'm going to say Dylan has been the one that has largely underperformed for me. You know, I thought last year was a weird year because of not just the game, but also kind of, you know, again, it was difficult for SMGs at times throughout the year. But I was looking at Dylan this year in 4v4 of this would be the year that he would have to go back to BO4 mode and maybe take over a game again, especially for a team like London who needs someone that does that. So I'm thinking Dylan right now would be my pick. The other player I was kind of lingering on, and I'll get more of a solid answer tomorrow, is Major Maniac. I thought the role that he played versus Atlanta was a very diligent, very disciplined role where he wasn't required to be a part of a lot of the fights when it came to Atlanta. They were looking at him to be the guy to hit the rotations early and lock down lanes. Now that we've gone to 4v4, you have to be able to see the Major Maniac that played on Gen.G. You have to be able to see that guy that's a playmaker that gets involved. And so far, I feel like his activity has not necessarily been as great as I've been hoping for. Now that could change when we see him tomorrow. But so far, I've been a little underwhelmed by Major Maniac, at least this part of the season. It's my pick.
Yeah, me too. I like that.
Nice. I'm glad that you like that, man.
We're on the same page, Alan.
Sometimes we do that and we're on the same page. We love when that happens. That's always good times, I feel like, for just about everybody that's out there. Hey, that means that we've come to the end of our show here. And I will tell you, this was a fun one. It was spicy. I think we'll probably make a couple people upset, which is always good. We love being able to keep this timeline a little spicy up in here. But we'll be back on Friday with a much larger breakdown of what happens both tomorrow and, of course, in the third game of days, day of games, the game of days. That's also a thing that sometimes
days and games. We got it all.
It's like Games of Thrones, but Game of Days instead. So we'll see you after day number 3, especially if you watch the show. The show is not as good as the book. That's all I'll leave you with. We'll see you guys on Friday for episode number 10. Until that point, hope you guys keep that fuse lit. Later, bye-bye.